My name is Lena Thompson, 29 years old. The moment I stepped into the Grand Metropolitan Hotel, I could already sense Sarah's fingerprints all over the choice. Marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers, and the scent of roses, probably imported, hung in the air. It wasn't just a place for a Thanksgiving dinner. It was a stage, and Sarah had cast herself as the star. "Are you sure you can afford this place, Lena?" She'd teased when booking it last month, her voice drenched in false sympathy. "I mean, with your little graphic design thing and all." That tone, half sweet, half poison, was her trademark. Everyone laughed with her, of course, even Dad. They always did. I'd learned long ago that in my family, my successes, whatever they thought those were merely footnotes compared to Sarah's or Kevin's. The dining hall was packed with families dressed in their best servers, weaving between tables like dancers. I wore my usual, a simple black dress, modest jewelry, nothing that screamed wealth. It wasn't poverty either, it was just me. But as soon as I sat down, I could feel Sarah's eyes sweep over me, calculating, ready to use even my clothes as ammunition. "Can you believe Lena wanted Thanksgiving at home?" Sarah announced, as soon as the waiter poured our first glasses of water. She made sure her voice carried to the table next to ours. I told her we can't celebrate a family like ours at Denny's. The table erupted in polite chuckles. Mom tried to cover her discomfort with a laugh, while Dad just nodded, adjusting his tie like Sarah's words were gospel. Kevin, my younger brother, already had his phone out, snapping photos of the chandelier. "This is going straight on my story," he muttered. "My followers will lose it." I hadn't suggested Denny's. I had suggested something simpler. Home Mom's kitchen, her turkey with the stuffing recipe she guarded like a national secret. But in Sarah's world, nostalgia was weakness, and family dinners were just another chance to flex. Sarah leaned in across the table, eyes sharp. "So Lena's still busy with those, what do you even call them, projects?" She lifted her fork delicately, as if the word itself were beneath her. Dad chimed in, carving into his prime rib like he was dissecting my life. "Yes, Lena. How's the graphic design thing going?" "It's going well," I answered, calm as still water. "Keeping busy." Busy with what Sarah pressed, smile poised like a dagger. Anything we'd recognize. Or just logos for Etsy shops. Kevin chuckled, shaking his head. "Mom, you hear this? Lena thinks her hobby is a career." The word stung, though, not in the way they imagined. Hobby. That was how they filed me away, cute, unthreatening, easy to dismiss. 7 years of building, creating, managing, erased by a single careless word. "Important to have hobbies," Mom added softly, like she was trying to soften the blow, but only pressing harder. I kept my face neutral, my voice steady. "Various things. Logos, websites, marketing materials." It was the kind of vague answer that made me invisible to them. And in a way, that invisibility had become my shield. The conversation flowed back to Sarah's world. Her pharmaceutical sales numbers, her new BMW lease, the condo she was eyeing downtown. Dad's pride was a spotlight turned fully on her. Kevin jumped in with news about his marketing job, his plans to propose to his girlfriend by Christmas. When they spoke, the table lit up. Questions, advice, laughter. When it was my turn, the air thickened. Even their silences were curated. "Lena," Dad said after Sarah's third monologue about bonuses, "you're 29. Time to think seriously about your future. Stability. Retirement planning." Sarah nodded, the perfect ally. "Exactly. And I actually know some people who could get you an entry-level position in marketing. Nothing glamorous, but you could work your way up. Entry-level. At 29. After running what I ran." "That's kind of you," I said evenly. "I'll think about it." Sarah's lips curved with satisfaction, convinced she had thrown me a lifeline. Kevin was too absorbed in his phone to notice the tension. "Look at this dessert menu," he said, showing us a picture of a $14 chocolate souffle. "This place is insane. My followers are going to think I'm living the high life." "You are living the high life," Sarah corrected him smoothly. Then, with a sidelong glance, added, "Well, most of us are." Her fork clinked against her plate, sharp as a bell. It wasn't just a jab, it was a performance, a signal to the table that the hierarchy was intact, Sarah at the top. Kevin right behind me, scraping the floor. I sipped my water, feeling the cold trace down my throat steadying me. The irony wasn't lost on me. They saw me as someone in need of saving, when in reality, I had spent years quietly watching them cataloging every assumption, every patronizing smile. Sarah leaned back, smirking. "Be honest, Lena. You couldn't afford to eat here on your own, could you? The table went still. Even Kevin looked up. Mom glanced at Dad. Everyone waited like hunters waiting for their prey to falter. I could have told them the truth. About the chef who called me personally, about the permanent reservation, about the contract signed with my name. I could have ended the game right there. Instead, I smiled faintly and said, "You're probably right." Sarah's triumph gleamed in her eyes. Dad nodded approvingly, mistaking my silence for surrender. They didn't know that sometimes the sharpest blade was hidden patience. The clinking of cutlery blended with the murmur of other families, but at our table every sound seemed sharpened, rehearsed. Sarah thrived in these moments. Every glance from a passing waiter was her cue, every laugh from Kevin, her applause. "Can you believe Lena thought Thanksgiving should be at home?" she said again. But this time she leaned forward, voice pitched higher to catch the attention of the couple at the neighboring table. "I mean, sure, it was cute when we were kids, but really, Denny's or Mom's kitchen just doesn't scream success." Dad chuckled, though it sounded forced, like a man trying to hide the fact he was swallowing bitterness with his prime rib. "Sarah has a point," he said. "It's important to evolve with the times." I tilted my glass, watching the water catch the chandelier light. Home hadn't been about times. It had been about Mom humming, while basting turkey, about Kevin sneaking spoonfuls of cranberry sauce before dinner, about Dad carving the bird while Sarah recited her endless school achievements. But Sarah had recast nostalgia as poverty, and everyone was playing along. Kevin scrolled on his phone again, showing Sarah a filtered picture of the dining room. She adjusted her posture instantly, angling her jaw like she was born for the camera. "Tag the hotel," she instructed. "Let people know the Williams family dines where it matters." Her words sliced through me. Our family name, our reputation, all staged on a platform that had nothing to do with warmth and everything to do with appearance. Kevin, oblivious, laughed. "Done. #blessed. Mom shifted in her seat, pearls catching the light, but said nothing. Silence had become her armor. She glanced at me, once a quick, almost guilty flicker, then looked away. So Sarah continued spearing a piece of salmon. "What's your plan, Lena? Because honestly, I worry about you. All this design stuff, it's not sustainable. Don't you want real security? A retirement account, health insurance, a career ladder." The irony nearly made me laugh. The woman who once racked up credit card debt chasing business investments she couldn't explain was now lecturing me on stability. "I'm doing fine," I said simply. Sarah's smile widened, sweet as poisoned honey. "Fine isn't enough. Look around," she gestured, with her fork toward the crystal glasses, the gilt-edged menus. "This is success. This is what happens when you make smart choices. And Lena," she leaned forward, lowering her voice just enough to draw everyone else closer, "I'm saying this with love, you're 29. It's time to wake up." Dad cleared his throat, seizing his chance to add weight. "Your sister's right. You're not a kid anymore. Maybe Sarah's contacts could help. Entry level is nothing to be ashamed of. Everyone has to start somewhere." Entry level. The word echoed in my chest like a dull bell. 7 years of blood and strategy, and to them, I was a charity case in need of training wheels. "That's generous of you," I said calmly. "I'll keep it in mind." Sarah sat back satisfied, basking in her own benevolence. To her, this was proof she was the family's savior, the golden child keeping the rest afloat. Kevin broke the tension with another photo. "Check it out," he said, showing the table. "Dessert here is like $14. 14 for cake." Mom frowned in, murmuring, "That's a lot." Sarah waved a manicured hand. "Don't worry, Mom. I've got this. When you're successful, you can afford to treat your family." Her eyes slid toward me, sharp, deliberate. "Right, Lena." Her trap was elegant. Rehearse forced me to admit I couldn't afford luxury, cementing her place above me. I smiled faintly. "Right." Her grin spread triumphant. But the tension didn't vanish. It clung to the tablecloth, to the unspoken truths hovering just beyond reach. Even Mom's fingers toyed nervously with her napkin, twisting the fabric into knots. "You probably couldn't eat here alone." Sarah pressed her voice, sugar slick, but rising in volume enough that 2 waiters glanced over. "Be honest, this place costs more than your entire week's paycheck from those little projects of yours." Kevin snorted. "She's got a point, Lena." Dad set his fork down, with finality, his tone carrying that old authority, the same voice that once scolded me for spilling juice for choosing art over law. "Stop pretending, Lena. It's time to face reality. You're struggling. Admit it. That's the first step toward making better choices." The words landed like a hammer. The air seemed to thicken, pressing down. Around us, laughter and clinking glasses continued oblivious, but at our table, silence reigned, waiting for me to crack. Sarah's eyes gleamed expectant. Kevin leaned forward, hungry for drama. Even Mom, though visibly uneasy, stayed quiet, waiting for me to confess to fold myself neatly into their version of the truth. Inside, I felt the familiar stirrings of anger, but also something stronger control. Years of swallowing their assumptions had honed my silence into steel. I set down my fork, gently looked Sarah in the eye, and said, "You're probably right." Confusion flickered across her face, then triumph. Dad nodded, approvingly, convinced he'd broken through my delusion. Kevin laughed, shaking his head. But beneath their satisfaction, I could sense unease, because I wasn't crying, wasn't arguing, wasn't begging for help. I was calm, too calm. And calmness in the face of humiliation was something they didn't know how to read. Sarah forced a laugh, lifting her glass. See, healthy acceptance. Finally. But her smile trembled at the edges. She'd expected me to collapse. Instead, I'd given her nothing to push against, nothing but silence and a strange, unreadable patience. The table moved on to lighter topics, Kevin's Instagram followers, Dad's kitchen renovation plans, but a subtle shift had settled in. They thought they'd won. They had no idea what was coming. The air around our table grew heavy, the kind of heaviness that wasn't in the food or the wine, but in the looks that passed between them. Sarah's triumphant smirk, Dad's approving nod, Kevin's self-satisfied chuckle. They believed I had finally admitted defeat. I could feel the dining room moving on around us, waiters serving steak au poivre glasses, clinking, other families laughing. Yet at our table, the laughter had a sharper edge, like they'd just staged an intervention and congratulated themselves on saving the lost sheep. "See," Sarah said brightly, like a teacher rewarding a child for a correct answer. "That's the first step, Lena. Accepting reality. You can't build a life on fairy tales and hobbies." Kevin leaned in, voice lowered, but still loud enough to carry. "Next step, letting us help you. I know someone at my firm who's always looking for assistance. Entry level, of course. But hey, it's a start." Dad tapped his knife against his plate with that rhythm he always used when delivering lessons. "It's time to stop pretending, Lena. You've been floating for too long. It's not a crime to struggle. What matters is facing it honestly." His words carried authority, but to me, they felt like déjà vu. I'd heard them in different forms my whole life. Be practical, Lena. Be realistic, Lena. Don't dream too big, Lena. They had built a cage out of concern, welded with underestimation, and expected me to live inside it. Mom shifted uneasily. Pearl necklace glinting as she looked at me. Her lips parted as if she might intervene, but no words came. Instead, she folded her hands on her lap as though praying I wouldn't embarrass myself further. Sarah reached across the table, laying her hand theatrically on mine. Her touch was soft, but her nails pressed lightly into my skin, a gesture that looked caring to anyone watching, but I knew it was about control. "I just want what's best for you, Lena," she said sweetly. "You can't even afford to eat here. That's not an insult, it's just the truth. Look at the prices." She pointed at the menu still beside my plate. "This entree alone probably costs more than you make in a week." Kevin laughed outright, pushing his phone aside. "God, Sarah, don't kill her. She's going to have a breakdown if you keep this up." But I wasn't breaking. My silence was unnerving them, though they masked it in humor and self-congratulation. Inside, my thoughts were quiet, sharp. "You still don't get it, do you? You think I'm drowning when I'm the one holding the lifeboat?" Sarah's eyes sparkled, sensing victory. "You know I love you, right?" Part of loving someone is telling them the truth. Someone has to, and if I don't, who will? Dad gave a firm nod, like a judge delivering a verdict. "She's right. Sometimes hard truths are the kindest gift." The words hung over the table like a sentence being carried out. Around us, waiters continued pouring wine for other families, the clatter of silverware filling the air. But at our table, silence followed Sarah's proclamation. It wasn't the silence of peace. It was the silence of anticipation, everyone waiting for me to finally shatter. I let the pause stretch. Seconds dragged. Their eyes were on me, searching for the cracks. Kevin's fingers drummed impatiently against his glass. Sarah's nails tapped the linen. Dad leaned back, arms folded, waiting. Even Mom's breath came quicker, as though bracing for my collapse. But collapse never came. Instead, I smiled. Not a smirk, not a bitter curve of lips, but a calm, steady smile that unsettled them more than tears ever could. "You're right," I said softly. The words echoed between us, simple and unshaken. Sarah blinked, thrown off balance. "Well, good. That's good, Lena. Acceptance is healthy. Kevin raised an eyebrow. That's it. No fight. No excuse. Why would I argue with the truth? I asked evenly. My calmness unsettled them. They had expected drama, maybe tears, maybe an outburst they could later dissect as Lena being sensitive again. Instead, I'd given them nothing but serenity. Sarah recovered quickly, pasting her smile back on. See, Mom. She's listening now. This is progress. Mom forced a smile in return, though her eyes darted between us uneasy. The waiter returned to clear plates, his polite, "Everything all right here," cutting through the tension. Sarah answered before anyone else could. "Perfect," she said sweetly, her hand still resting on mine as though she were the benevolent older sister guiding me back to the right path. When the waiter left, Sarah exhaled like the leader of a successful mission. "This is good, Lena. Really. I know it hurts now, but you'll thank me someday." Kevin nodded. "First step's admitting you've got a problem." Dad leaned in, voice dropping into that serious register again. "You've taken a hard look at yourself tonight, Lena. I'm proud of you for that. Now it's time to rebuild." Their words washed over me, not with pain, but with an odd kind of clarity. It wasn't just tonight. This was the pattern, the ritual. Every gathering, every holiday, every meal, it was always about proving their success and diagnosing my failure. And I had always let them. But tonight was different. Tonight they thought they'd finally broken me. They didn't realize the ground beneath them was about to give way. I was about to take another sip of water when I noticed movement at the edge of the dining room. A man in a navy suit, shoulders squared, stride purposeful. Even before his face came into focus, I knew who it was. Marcus Chen, general manager of the Grand Metropolitan. Impeccable as always. His presence commanded attention, without demanding it. For the past 3 years, he had been my right hand in everything that mattered here. The table straightened instinctively as if important company were approaching. Sarah smoothed her hair, assuming he must be coming to acknowledge her generosity in treating the family. Dad tugged his tie lips, twitching with anticipation of recognition. Kevin angled his phone discreetly, ready to catch a flattering candid. But Marcus's eyes weren't on them. They were fixed on me. He stopped at our table, offered a polite smile to everyone else, then inclined his head toward me. "Ms. Thompson," he said clearly, "your ownership suite is ready whenever you'd like." The words landed like a stone dropped in water. Ripples of shock spread instantly. Sarah's fork froze halfway to her lips. Kevin's phone slipped in his hands, clattering onto the table. Mom's eyes widened, lips parting in confusion. Dad blinked, as though the word ownership had short-circuited his mind. Marcus continued calm and professional. "Also, the quarterly reports are prepared for your review. The architect has a few questions regarding the renovation plans for the executive floors, and the head chef asked whether you'd prefer the usual wine selection for tomorrow's board dinner, or if you'd like to see new options." Silence. Pure raw silence. The only sound was Kevin fumbling to pick his phone back up. Marcus glanced around the table politely. "I hope your family is enjoying Thanksgiving dinner. Please let me know if you require anything further." I could feel their eyes on me, burning, desperate, incredulous. For a moment, I just breathed, letting the tension tighten like a violin string. Then softly I said, "Tomorrow morning will be fine, Marcus. The usual wine selection." "Excellent," Marcus said with a smile. "And shall I let housekeeping know you won't need the ownership suite tonight since you'll be with family?" Sarah's lips parted, but no sound came. Kevin's face was a mixture of disbelief and something close to awe. Dad stared at Marcus as though waiting for him to retract the words. "Ownership suite," Kevin finally croaked. Marcus looked puzzled, his brow furrowing slightly. "Yes, Ms. Thompson owns the Grand Metropolitan. Has for several years now." He nodded politely. "We'll make sure everything is ready for your board meeting tomorrow." With that, he excused himself and disappeared toward the manager's desk. The silence that followed was unlike anything I'd ever experienced at a family dinner. Heavy, suffocating, alive. Dad was the first to break. His voice came out rough, uncertain. "I'm sorry," he said. "Ownership." I picked up my glass and took a sip before answering. "Yes." "You own this hotel." Sarah's voice was a whisper, trembling between disbelief and outrage. "Yes," I said again, calm as if I'd just confirmed the weather. Kevin leaned forward, jaw slack. "Like, the whole hotel, not just a part." "The whole hotel," I replied. Mom's hand flew to her necklace fingers, clutching the pearls like they could anchor her. "But when how you live in that tiny apartment? You drive that old car, how?" 3 years ago, I said evenly. The previous owners were looking to sell. The numbers made sense. I made the purchase. Dad's brow furrowed. Deeper, his businessman's instincts battling with the shock. Lena, this has to be a multi-million-dollar property. It is, I confirmed. Kevin was already scrolling frantically on his phone, fingers trembling. Holy shit, he muttered. Williams Hospitality Group. That's you. You own not just this place, you own 4 hotels, and a restaurant group, and some kind of resort development. He looked up at me, stunned. Lena, this says Forbes interviewed you last year. Sarah's face twisted pale and rigid. But your clothes, your apartment. Why would you live like someone with nothing? Because I prefer to keep things simple, I said. Her voice cracked sharp with humiliation. You let us think you were broke. I never said I was broke, I corrected gently. You assumed I was. I let you. The truth settled over the table like smoke, clinging inescapable. They had written my story for me, painted me as the struggling sibling, the one in need of saving, and I had let them. Dad leaned back in his chair, face shadowed with a dawning regret. My God, he murmured. Across from me, Sarah stared at her plate, her carefully constructed confidence crumbling. Her fork slipped from her fingers and clinked against the china, a small sound that seemed deafening in the silence. Kevin muttered under his breath, No way. No way we've been sitting here mocking you while you own the whole damn hotel. Mom finally found her voice. Why didn't you tell us, Lena? I looked at her, steady and calm. Because none of you ever asked what I actually did. For a long moment, no one spoke. Only the hum of the dining room carried on around us, clinking glasses, laughter from other families, the soft scrape of plates. At our table, though, the silence was suffocating. Then Kevin broke it, eyes wide, as his thumb scrolled furiously over his phone. Oh my God. Lena, you're on here, Williams Hospitality Group. This is you, isn't it? It says you own not just the Grand Metropolitan, but 3 other hotels, and a restaurant group. His voice shook. Holy shit, Forbes did a feature on you last year. Rising star in luxury hospitality. All eyes turned to me again. I set my napkin down neatly. That's accurate. Sarah's laugh burst out sharp and brittle. No, that doesn't make sense. She shook her head, hair falling out of place for the first time all night. You drive a beat-up Honda Lena. You live in a 1-bedroom apartment. You wear this. She gestured at my plain black dress like it was evidence of fraud. People who own hotels don't look like you. Her words carried a sting, but more for her than for me. She needed the world to make sense, needed the hierarchy to remain intact. Sarah, the golden child, and me, the pitiful one. My existence had been her measuring stick. Without it, what was she? I live the way I choose, I said simply. Dad leaned forward, voice low, urgent. Lena, this is a multi-million-dollar property. Are you telling me you've been sitting here letting us talk down to you when you're worth... He trailed off, struggling to finish. Comfortable, I answered. His jaw tightened. Comfortable, Lena, this kind of empire generates tens of millions in revenue. 42 million last year? Kevin muttered, eyes still glued to his phone. Revenue, not profit. But still. He looked up at me, awe written across his face. You built an empire and we didn't know. Mom's hand trembled as it clutched her pearls. Her voice cracked with both wonder and shame. Why didn't you tell us we're your family? I held her gaze. Because for years, none of you asked what I actually did. You only asked if I was still doing my little design projects. Not once did you want to know the truth. The words hit harder than I expected. Mom's face fell, guilt flooding her eyes. Sarah slammed her hand against the table, rattling the cutlery. That's not fair. I was trying to help you. I offered to connect you with people to get you a real job. You could have told me the truth then. I tilted my head, my voice even. And would you have listened? Or would you have dismissed it like every other time I tried to explain something you didn't want to hear? Her lips parted, but no words came. Dad cleared his throat, visibly shaken. He looked older than he had an hour ago. My God, he whispered. All this time. We treated you like a child, like you needed guidance. You treated me like a failure, I corrected quietly. There's a difference. Sarah's eyes glistened with unshed tears, though her jaw stayed clenched, unwilling to surrender fully. Kevin, on the other hand, leaned back in his chair, shaking his head with a hollow laugh. Jesus Christ. I was showing off eating at your hotel, posting it like I was some big shot. Meanwhile, you're the one signing paychecks for half the staff here. The absurdity of it hung between us, almost comical in its cruelty. Mom's fingers brush mine hesitantly. Lena, honey, we thought we were helping. We thought we were protecting you. I let her hold my hand for a moment before answering. You were protecting your idea of me, not me. The truth was bitter, but necessary. Sarah pressed a napkin to her lips, her voice breaking. All those times I compared you to me. All those comments. I didn't know. I know, I said gently. That's why I didn't take it personally. Her head snapped up, eyes wet. You should have, because I was cruel. Kevin looked between us, guilt heavy in his posture. We've all been cruel. Dad's voice cut through, steady but shaken. Lena, I need to say this. I was wrong. We were wrong. We assumed, we judged, we belittled. And all along, he exhaled, shaking his head, all along you were the most successful of us all. I didn't answer immediately. I wanted the silence to settle, to make them sit with the weight of their own words. And then, as if to punctuate the moment, Marcus returned, leather folder in hand. He placed it gently beside me. Apologies for interrupting again, Ms. Thompson, he said. The mayor's office confirmed your availability for Tuesday's tourism board meeting, and Forbes would like to schedule the follow-up interview. Shall I have them call your direct line? The word Forbes echoed like a gunshot at the table. Dad froze. Mom gasped softly. Kevin's eyes widened as he whispered, "Oh my God." Sarah closed her eyes, and a single tear slipped free. Marcus inclined his head respectfully. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Then he left us in the wreckage of our silence. I picked up my glass, the stem cool against my fingertips, and met their stares head-on. Now you understand why I said nothing. People treat you differently when they think you're successful. They relate to your money, not to you. I wanted to know who you were when you thought I had nothing. Their silence was answer enough. The leather folder Marcus left sat beside my plate like a silent witness, its weight heavier than any words we'd exchanged all night. No one reached for their food now. Dessert plates cooled untouched. Dad finally exhaled long and shaky. Lena, I don't even know what to say. His hands trembled slightly as he folded his napkin. All these years I've lectured you about responsibility, stability, the importance of planning ahead, and all along you were building something beyond anything I could have imagined. His voice cracked. I treated you like a disappointment. The admission struck harder than any of Sarah's barbs. Dad had never said those words aloud, but I had felt them every gathering, every sigh when I shared my life. Now he confessed it plainly. You loved me, I said softly, but you didn't respect me. He closed his eyes as though the truth was too much to bear. Sarah dabbed at her eyes with her napkin mascara smudging. I mocked you, Lena. I compared you to me like you were some cautionary tale. I thought I was lifting you up when I was actually crushing you. She shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping. God, I even offered you an entry-level job at your own board dinner venue. Her voice cracked into a sob. I've been so arrogant. Kevin had gone silent, staring at the screen of his phone without really seeing it. Finally, he looked up. I've been an ass to you, too. All those jokes about your little hobby, all the times I thought I was the successful brother keeping your spirits up, I didn't realize I was humiliating you. His throat tightened. You didn't need my encouragement. You didn't need saving. You were already ahead of us all. Mom's hands trembled as she reached for mine across the table. Her eyes were red glassy. We were wrong about everything. And we didn't even try to know you. We assumed, we dismissed, and we hurt you. Before I could respond, Marcus returned once more, expression professional, but voice urgent. Apologies again, Ms. Thompson. We have a situation. The Henderson wedding tomorrow has increased their guest count significantly. We'll need to move them to the grand ballroom. Additional catering and staffing costs will be about $30,000, but the client has already approved full coverage. Do you want me to authorize the change? $30,000, Kevin blurted, incredulous. Marcus remained poised, waiting on me. I nodded calmly. Authorize it. Charge the client directly, and make sure housekeeping readjusts the ballroom setup before dawn. Yes, Ms. Thompson. Marcus inclined his head and left. The table was silent again, but the silence had changed. No longer smug or triumphant, it was reverent, almost fearful. 30,000, Kevin whispered again, shaking his head. That's more than I make in, God, months. And you just approved it like it was nothing. Sarah pressed a trembling hand to her forehead. You live in another world, Lena, one I can't even fathom. And all this time I've been bragging about my BMW lease like it was something. Her voice cracked on the last word, breaking into sobs she couldn't contain. Mom squeezed my hand harder. Can you forgive us? She asked, voice trembling. For treating you the way we did. I studied their faces, red-rimmed eyes, slumped shoulders, shame etched into every line. My chest tightened, but not with triumph, with something heavier. There's nothing to forgive, I said quietly. You behaved based on what you thought you knew. That's human. But it was also educational for me. I have seen exactly how you treat someone you think is less than you, and now I know it wasn't just a slip, it was a pattern. Dad covered his face with both hands, shaking his head. We failed you, as parents, as a family. His voice dropped rough with grief. I should have been proud of you years ago. Instead, I belittled you. I pushed you into a mold you never fit. I never asked who you really were. His words hit the table like confession in a church raw and unpolished. Sarah looked up at me, mascara streaking her cheeks. Lena, I don't even know how to look at you now. You've always been my little sister, the one who needed guidance, protection. But you don't need me. You never did. You're... Her voice faltered. You're stronger than all of us. Tears welled in Kevin's eyes, surprising even him. We've been cruel, not just tonight, for years. And you just sat there. Let us think we were the successful ones. I wanted to see who you really were when you thought I was struggling, I said evenly. Now I know. The truth of it hung in the air like smoke impossible to ignore. The tension at the table lingered like smoke after a fire, thick and cloying. Plates of dessert sat untouched, their sweetness soured by everything that had come before. Then, just as the silence began to choke, Marcus reappeared this time with a chilled bottle of champagne and crystal flutes. Compliments of the house, he said smoothly, already pouring. And Ms. Thompson, the staff, asked me to confirm preparations for tomorrow's board meeting. Catering is finalized. Presentation materials are printed, and the mayor's office called again to thank you for your hospital donation. They'll be sending a formal letter this week. The mayor, a donation. Each word another stone dropped into the already cracked foundation of my family's certainty. When Marcus retreated, Dad picked up his glass, his hand unsteady, but his gaze steady on me. His voice carried something I hadn't heard in years, pride threaded with regret. To Lena, he said solemnly. To the daughter we underestimated, to the sister we dismissed, to the woman who built something extraordinary while we were too blind to see it, and to the family we will be from now on, one that asks questions instead of assuming, one that respects instead of belittling. His eyes glistened as he raised his glass higher. To Lena. The others followed, murmuring the words, glasses clinking softly. Sarah's hand trembled as she lifted hers. Kevin's jaw was tight, his eyes shining. Mom's lips quivered around the single word Lena. The champagne was crisp, effervescent, but what I felt as I swallowed was heavier than bubbles. For the first time in years, I wasn't performing the role of the family disappointment. I was simply me. We lingered a while longer, the conversation halting tentative. Sarah mostly stayed quiet, her fork tracing idle patterns on the linen tablecloth. Kevin scrolled less, as though embarrassed by his own habit. Dad sat straighter, subdued, while Mom kept reaching for me, with small gestures, a brush of her hand, a squeeze of my fingers, desperate to re-knit a bond she now saw as frayed. When we finally stood to leave, Sarah tugged at my sleeve. Her voice was low, stripped of its usual polish. Can I ask you something? I nodded. All those times I offered to help you, when I acted like I was better than you, when I laughed at your so-called projects, did you think I was being cruel on purpose? Her eyes shone watery, desperate for absolution. I considered my answer carefully. No. I think you were being human. You thought you were helping. The problem wasn't your intentions, Sarah. The problem was that you never asked what I actually needed. Her tears broke free, then sliding down her cheeks as she nodded. I want to be different. I swear I will be. I hope so, I said softly. We walked together through the lobby. Dad held his head lower than usual. Mom glanced around with new eyes. Kevin shoved his phone deep into his pocket. The marble floors, the chandelier, the uniformed staff, all of it looked different to them, now tinted by the knowledge that it belonged to the sister they had pitied. At the entrance, Marcus stood ready once again. Ms. Thompson, your car service is waiting. And of course your family's parking fees have been waived. Car service, Kevin muttered, half under his breath. The small details, perks, privileges, gestures of deference seemed to pierce them more deeply than the millions in revenue. Outside in the cool night air, Dad pulled me into a hug. It was firmer than the half-hearted embraces of the past, his voice low in my ear. I'm proud of you, Lena. I should have said it years ago. I should have said it for the right reasons. I'm sorry. Thank you, I whispered back. And for the first time in years, I meant it. One by one, they hugged me. Mom with tears streaming down her cheeks, Kevin with awkward shame in his posture, Sarah with her arms tightening like she didn't want to let go. Each embrace felt different than before, not pity, not condescension, something closer to respect. As I watched them drive away, their car disappearing down the city street, I felt something unexpected stir in me. Optimism. Maybe things would change. Maybe dinners would no longer be interventions disguised as celebrations. Maybe they would finally learn to see me not the caricature they'd painted of me. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a text. From Sarah. Lena, would you have time for coffee this week? I want to really learn about your work, not just pretend, not just wait for my turn to talk. I mean, really learn. I smiled at the screen, fingers moving quickly. I'd like that. For the first time in years, I was looking forward to what came next.